So on Thursday, the Algerians are going to bring to, or we're talking about bringing to the United Nations another ceasefire resolution. We can put up this element from Joe Biden. The administration came out and announced that they would veto. They said it will not be adopted. They will veto a ceasefire resolution. So on the one hand, Biden is privately and semi-publicly urging Netanyahu not to launch an invasion of Rafah. Separately, he is facilitating the transfer of more weapons, which would assist with this invasion of Rafah. And on top of that, is promising to veto any international accountability for this invasion. So in order to try to find some gap between what the United States is doing and what Israel is doing, you have to squint insanely hard. Like we are 100% complicit in what we have described as a disaster. Like the State Department and Kirby from the White House have both used the word disaster to describe what would happen if there was an invasion of Rafah.
Right, and yet that appears to be like that's what's happening.
And we're gonna veto an effort to stop it, and we're going to arm it. It is. I understand why it is making people so crazy watching it unfold. Like, wait a minute, we think this is a disaster. We don't want this to happen, but we're going to use our capital internationally to block the UN, and we're going to arm it.
This makes Biden actually more pro-Israel even than Obama.
Absolutely.
Because he would I don't know if you remember, in 2016, they allowed a couple of resolutions and all that to go through the UN, specifically to try and to pressure
Bibi and Netanyahu hated each other.
That was a blood feud for the ages, which is interesting.
I helped Amir Tabon, this great Israeli reporter, who he became kind of a journalistic celebrity October 7th and 8th because he wrote this like incredible piece about being stuck in a safe room in one of the kibbutzim and being saved by his grandfather, who came all the way from Tel Aviv to rescue his family. He's working on a book now about the relationship about the last like 50 years or so. But I helped him with a profile of the relationship between Netanyahu and Obama back in like 2015, 2016. People should go back and read that. These two teams did not like each other, as John Madden like to say. Speaking of people that don't like each other, so let's move to the international response to this coming Rafah invasion. We can put up Lula Da Silva here, president of Brazil. He's saying what is happening in the Gaza Strip hasn't happened in history before. It does not exist at any other historical context. And then Lula adds, in fact, it existed when Hitler decided to kill the Jews.
Wow. Whoa.
So a president of Brazil analogizing, what Israel is doing to the Palestinians, what happened during the Holocaust. Moving back to Europe, the criticism is serious, but not quite on the level of Lula rhetoric. But let's put up here EU Foreign Minister Joseph Borrell at the Munich conference, because this is a really fascinating point. He made a couple of other points before this. This one, though, I think is really worth considering. So let's roll E6.
Let's take a listen.
And the Global South, the third one, they have its own dynamic. But no doubt, the war in Ukraine and in Gaza has increased tremendously the political space of the Global South vis-à-vis to us. And we have to avoid the rest against the West. For Russia, this new geopolitical scenario has increased dramatically its stance since the beginning of the war in Gaza. And they are really taking good advantage of our mistakes. The blame about double standards is something that we need to address, and not only with nice words. It's clear that the wind is blowing against the West, is blowing against us, and we have to win the battle of narrative.
And so right before this, he had said, look, when it comes to Ukraine, with the exception of maybe one country, I assume he means Hungary, we've been united on this situation. He said, but when it comes to Gaza, and when it comes to Israel, all the member states want to play games, play their own little game. He said the result of that is that it is becoming the West against the rest. And he's trying to let the European elite there, the European leadership, into the fact that this has been a godsend for everyone outside of the West, that the double standard is so apparent across the global South that when you hear somebody like Lula make a comparison as extreme as that, what he's saying is that that's resonating with billions of people around the world, and you need to understand where that's going. So, how are you surprised at the kind of the geopolitical chaos that's been that the West seems to be willing to accept for this war?
Well, I was surprised on Ukraine. I mean, I watched us realign our relationships with Brazil and India, which are, I'm going to say, 100 times more important to us than freaking Ukraine. Like, basically, I mean, think about this. We think that the territory of the Eastern Donbass region, the territorial integrity of that, is so important that we should sacrifice—
Oblasts that Nikki Haley can't name.
Right, oblasts that nobody in this country could name, including the people who want to ship them weapons. We think that is more important, that integrity, than our relationship with the Indian government, or with the Brazilian government, or with the South African government. And then you combine this situation with Israel, where all of the rhetoric that we were using to the Indians, to the Brazilians, and to others as to why we should support them around civilians and about rules-based order and all of that. They're like, are you a joke? They're like, no, we don't believe you. They already thought that we were empty, hollow people working great power politics and shrouding it in rhetoric. Now this just confirms it to them in an exact one-to-one situation. So yeah, I mean, it doesn't shock me at all what has happened with our geopolitical situation. I do think it's been a disaster for us because it both undermines any rhetoric that we have on human rights. And look, I'm on record. I don't really believe foreign policy should be conducted that way. But if you're going to, at least be consistent. And we're not doing anything that is in our direct strategic interest. So we're in this odd, third bubble where we selectively apply both, which makes us weak on all fronts.
And to the point about human rights, and we can go back to that Channel 14 documentary that we talked about at the very top. We can roll this one little clip from there, which is just an absolutely shocking thing that was published, that was aired on Israeli TV. This is an Israeli interrogator who said human animals, most of them, of course, at the beginning deny any connection to the events of October 7th. And through certain tools and means, we managed to get the first confessions out of them. So essentially, this is an Israeli interrogator on Israeli TV saying that they use certain tools and means to move Palestinian detainees from denying involvement in October 7th to confessing, quote unquote, confessing to involvement in October 7th. Saagar, how long would it take you under certain tools and means until you told your captors whatever?
I don't know.
I don't even know if they would have to do it. I think if they pulled the drill out, I'd be like, all right, what do you want me to sign?
I've read enough
I'm not going
Vietnam
through this.
POW books. By the way, I could go on a whole tangent because I went down a real rabbit hole on Vietnam POWs to know that, number one, everybody breaks, and number two, that there's virtually nothing that you can tell yourself that will prepare you for being in a situation that is even remotely like this, and that you very likely, like you said, will likely be able to tell your captors whatever you want, whatever they want to hear, or at least try and placate them in certain instances just to be able to stop that. And that was obviously an extreme case. I don't know necessarily what these gentlemen went through, but this was often. You don't have to ask me. You can ask former POW John McCain. You won't ever hear me cite him, favorably often, but he made this case a lot during the Bush administration when he was very against enhanced interrogation against al-Qaeda detainees, certain tools and means, specifically because he was like, look, I don't have a moral care for these people. He's like, it just doesn't work. And propagandistically, when you put stuff out there, people know they're not dumb. They're like, okay, well, it seems like you were questioned under duress, then they're not going to, they're going to discount a lot of what you were saying. So no, I'm not surprised by it.
And in this documentary, they're picking up detainee after detainee, every male that seems to be anywhere between teenage and not elderly. They've got the cameras there, making a little documentary. Where were you on October 7th? I was in my factory. I was in a bakery, and they're like, we don't believe you over here.
Yes.
There were at the start of this 2.3 million people in Gaza. There were several thousand that participated in the attack on October 7th, and then several hundred civilians that also broke through the fence. Like, if you pick up every single male that you see in Gaza, 999 out of 1,000 of those are going to be innocent.
Right.
And you're going to use this torture on them to extract a confession that doesn't make what they tell you true.
Ryan, you have the case of a doctor. Do you want to highlight that to people? Because you have a personal connection to this.
Well, yeah, so we can put up Dr. Khaled Al-Sur here from Nasser Hospital. On Friday, a colleague of his was sending me WhatsApp video and audio messages and photos from Nasser Hospital, hoping that, and that's right there is something that Dr. Al-Sur posted on Instagram himself. What's so poignant about this on Friday for me was there was this intense belief from Dr. Al-Sur and his friends and those who were reaching out to me and others in the press that if only we could get this to the White House. And I did. I said, I will send this to the White House, and I sent it. Can I get comment on what's going on at Al Nasser Hospital? I want to let you know that Dr. Khaled Al-Sur is saying this. He was one of the ones who worked in the ICU. He sent videos of the ICU going dark, literally pulling the plug on it, which ended up killing patients. Because if you need oxygen and you pull the plug, you are at risk of dying, and multiple people in that ICU did die. So I reached out to the White House, said people are dying in Al Nasser's ICU. This is what the doctor's telling us. Do you have any response? Because I don't want to get myself in a position where I'm kind of advocating for the U.S. to do anything in particular, but I'm going to let them know. Like right now, as we're speaking, people's lives are at risk, and if you decide to do something to save their lives, then you decide to do that. But I'm making you aware of it. But what was so interesting to me, and this has been happening throughout the entire conflict, so many Palestinians will reach out hoping that I can get word to the White House to stop X, Y, or Z atrocity that is underway but not even finished yet. Like, there's still a chance to save people, whether it's like the Hindra job situation is a great example. And like I said, I'll reach out for comment, but the whole time I'm thinking, your faith in the United States is touching and poignant, but misplaced.
Yeah.
They know what Israel is doing. They are arming Israel to do that thing. They are using their international capital to block the world from intervening to stop this from happening. But I feel it deeply, this belief that there has to be somebody you can call to stop this. It looks and feels so wrong. And with the right kind of phone call, it could be stopped.
Well,
but they're
like
not.
You said.
But they're not going to do it. You can call 911, but that 911 is arming the people who are burglarizing your house at the moment.
Well, the case that you're making is very poignant, and it's exactly one that Rashida Tlaib is making.
Oh, and so
right.
by the way, just to finish on Dr. Al-Sur, they raided the hospital, and as far as anybody can tell, he was picked up along with all the other doctors and is held incommunicado in Israeli captivity right now. Israel just racking up more and more hostages, and so his colleagues and his friends put out a statement begging basically Israel to release this doctor and the other doctors that they picked up. So far to no avail. That was Friday night U.S. time, I guess Saturday morning their time. Now here we are Monday morning. Still no word on his fate, if he's even alive, or whether he's getting the certain tools and means to try to force him to confess that he wasn't actually a doctor, despite all of the evidence that he is, and instead he's actually Palestinian Islamic Jihad operative or whatever.
Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.